Namaste, my dear friends, and welcome to our next episode. We are continuing our journey together, and today I will be talking about some really tough experiences, very challenging experiences, again related to overcoming the traps of spiritual ego, shadow energies, all sorts of challenges that came my way, especially Mohanji, of course, as well, but this was quite a lot directed at me, and so far was the biggest test, I think, that I faced on the path. So I'll start with that period. It was end of 2015 and early 2016 and stretching to 2017. This was the time when I went through this biggest turmoil, and at the same time this was the time when I changed my name to Devi Mohan, and in that way I somehow chose to go through this test, because it's almost like when you change the track on the highway, you have to move at a different speed, so you better gear up. It wasn't just one experience, it was a series of experiences, one after the other. And just when I thought that it was over, then another hit comes. So it was a very, very tough time for me. So I'll start with spiritual ego is the most refined aspect of our ego, and it hides the most, and we don't feel it's there, we just feel we are being normal, but only when you actually prick it, later on you see you are able to have that viveka, or discrimination between what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is not right. And if one has the wisdom to just hang on to the guru and do exactly what the guru says, then you're actually not in the trouble so much. But the way it works is that sometimes the illusion happens that there is something better out there, or there's somebody else can give us something better, or it becomes just so attractive, and that's the lure of it. That's the test. That's how it works. So back in 2015 December, Mila and I went to India, and this was the first and only time where we stayed in India for 2 months, like the entire winter holiday kind of part. So like December, January, we were continuously with Mohanji. Usually we stay shorter, but this was the time when we stayed 2 or 2.5 months continuously. And only later I understood why tradition made this so. And it was very important that we were there at that time of the big tests. So basically the problems or challenges started with one man who initially connected with us way back when we were still in the Middle East. He seemed very sincere and humble, and he was very much into spiritual practice. He came to see Mohanji, heard about him, came to see him, received Shaktipad from Mohanji, and he was like so receptive, and so sensitive that with one Shaktipad he went into a very deep state where he couldn't even feel his head, couldn't feel his body for a while. He was staying the whole night in our puja room, I remember, and we were all quite impressed, with his dedication and sincerity, and how much he was chanting, how much he was meditating. So it was somebody who, seemed like a person who is sincerely going for it, who is on the spiritual path. So Mohanji being someone who, as I said, when he just gives wholeheartedly, and he doesn't keep anything back, he doesn't count, he doesn't compare. And also it all comes with a certain naivety, the Bholenath quality of Shiva, as I mentioned before. So he allowed this man to kind of stay with us. Sometimes he even traveled with Mohanji and slept in the same bed. And, it was like completely somebody who was hanging out with us and was part of our group, closer team. So when Milo and I reached India in December, he was there, and very much so. And we were traveling around, and we went through different programs. It was all happening at the same time, but we didn't know, and Mohanji didn't look, because I understand how he works. He doesn't, keep an eye in this way. He's not like watchful. He doesn't scheme in any way. He simply flows, and he trusts that if there's anything he is supposed to see that is related to himself, he will see it. The tradition will reveal it to him. So he doesn't use his third eye for himself. I mentioned this before. So Mohanji probably didn't notice it. And this man was actually, aside from doing the spiritual practice that Mohanji gave him, and whatever was given to him as mantras by Mohanji and so forth, he was also doing something else, which was not our path, which is not the white path. It was a manipulative nature. And he started to enjoy it. He started to, go into that more deeply. And he himself became manipulative. I have never experienced this before. This level of direct experience with the shadow energies. I intentionally don't use more harsh words. For me, it's all shadow energies, different gradation of that same type of energy. So I've never experienced before that somebody puts something in my food, that there puts certain items around which then affect you physically, emotionally, mentally, and you kind of don't feel like yourself fully, So that's something I've not experienced before, and it's not something that's evident either. So there are certain inconveniences you feel physically, heaviness and certain irritability and things going in a wrong way, and then being annoyed with this, being annoyed with that. So this was going on, all of it was piling up together. Then on top of that, aside from him, I had an issue with one lady from Europe who was a new devotee, and she joined recently, but she was so deeply connected, and she's so hands-on with everything that Mohanji respected her a lot, and everybody in the team was in awe of her performance, because she was doing it fully, like waking up 3:30 in the morning, doing her kriya, then coming to take her tasks from Mohanji, then very organized, very methodical, very intelligent, also very beautiful, good looking, perfect with coordination, reliable, great with photography, great with this, so everything. It was like the superwoman, So she was there, and this was probably the first time ever in my life that I sensed certain jealousy. This never happened to me. As I said, somehow in my life I was the one who was having the issue of others being jealous of me, and for me it was not normal to feel jealousy. I just don't have it in my bones, it's not part of my system. But here it was not just the looks of a lady or somebody being younger and more capable. I felt where my buttons were pressed in her case was the devotion that she displayed, and just how far she went. Whatever is being told, she does it, and plus does extra, plus being proactive, it was just like impressive. And everybody talking about, wow, she did this, so they're noticing how she's effective, and they were saying she's doing the work for 5 people. Like what 5 people would do, she's one person who does it. So she was getting more and more trust from the team members. She was assuming more and more responsibilities and roles. And as is natural, the higher the responsibility, the greater the power and influence of any individual, right? So because she was so responsible and so dedicated, she was becoming more and more influential and more powerful in a very short span of time. Now, I was observing this, and I was fine with, like, of course, we need really dedicated volunteers. The mission needs it. It's all very beautiful. But as a woman, I was sensing something else, and I was the only one who sensed this. Nobody else felt it. I felt there was something else in there. It was, from a woman's perspective, it's like aiming to take over. She was in a way aiming to take over as number one, being closest to Mohanji, and also becoming like, if I could say that, the Shakti of the mission. And at that time, I was still not fully. I was not fully in my shoes, you could say, as in the role that I could play in the mission. I was not fully efficient. We moved from the Middle East to Serbia. I lived in my parents' house. I had my limitations, and with the child, with everything, I was still kind of not fully there myself. So it's natural that I had to be tested. I feel that from a higher perspective, it was good that this happened, to give clarity to me about myself, and to make me decide, will I step up or kind of go down. That status quo could not be maintained. So I feel in a way grateful to her that with her behavior, with her dedication, she has revealed to me my own shortcomings. But as it was happening, it was not very pleasant to experience at all. So I can just give one example. Like we were at one location where you do like a walk of 4 or 5 hours barefoot around the mountain. And I've actually been at that same location a couple of years before during one of my yoga teacher trainings. And we walked from 4 o'clock in the morning till like 11 a.m. barefoot. And once the sun came up, those little pebbles on the road was so painful, and it was really tough because coming from Europe, we are not so used to walking barefoot. So I was. I remember the time I counted, I had 12 blisters on my feet, and it was painful, So when we were supposed to do the same walk around the mountain, I told this to her, like, she said she wants to go barefoot. So I told her, oh my God, I've had this experience and it's really tough, maybe Indian people who are used to walking barefoot can do it, but I wouldn't recommend you, I had a really tough experience. So she was like, okay. But then she went to Mohanji and she asked for the blessing, and he blessed her, and she wanted to take up that challenge, and then she went barefoot, and then when she came back, I was there when she bowed down to him and said, I was flying, it was also, I was just in connecting with you, and I was flying, and I didn't feel any weight of this walk, nothing, and my feet and everything was perfect. And then, Mohanji was praising her depth of devotion and depth of connection. And I was like feeling, that was just one of the examples. So, it was literally, a feeling that this woman is just like out there for it. It's all happening for her. But as I said, I was also noticing there are so many things that she was hiding. But then she was very secretive, and I didn't feel I could fully trust her. That complete openness and purity, purity of intention. I couldn't feel that. And that's where I had my reserve towards her. But it was continuously her behavior, and what she was displaying was continuously like in my face, pointing out to my own shortcomings. So as a woman, it's not easy to go through this. So at the same time, we had him doing his manipulative stuff, and she was around. So both were going on at the same time. And then came a point when I decided to change my name to Devi Mohan. So there were several things indicating this. I mentioned before, during my first Shaktipat, Shirdi Baba said that the highest version of me is Devi, or what would be in Europe, Mother Mary. So I suddenly got this idea. That I would change my name to Devi in order to strengthen the highest in me. Now that idea was supported by some other synchronicities. I remember 4 or 5 synchronicities happened at the same time, everything pointing to Devi, 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 Devi. So in the end, I felt it was the time to do this. Now I was aware that changing the name to Devi would be really a test of my inner connection to myself, to my own truth. Because when you are living your truth, you don't pay so much attention what others think or say. And especially in Serbia or in Europe in general, changing a name to a divine name is not a common thing. In India it's common. You have so many Krishnas and Ramas, and it's a normal thing, because in India it's understood that one of the smartest things to do is to give yourself a name of a really high vibration and meaning, because then you strengthen that in your own life. Because how many times per day people call you by your name, and each time you're called by that name at a subtle level, that vibration is strengthened in you. So I decided to change my name to Devi, and I was aware, in my country, Devica means the virgin. So Devi, Devica, it's pretty much in that same connotation. So it's almost like you call yourself something purest, virgin, great. So it's not an easy thing to introduce, and there was nobody else who did it, so I would be the first one. And that's where the manipulative work of this guy with us increased to the next level. And when he saw me changing the name into Devi, he approached me with an intention of hooking me. So he told me that he can teach me a mantra that would truly make me a Devi. It's a very powerful and very special mantra, and he feels that I'm ready. So basically at this time, his influence on Mohanji was to make him look all the time angry, and I couldn't even talk to Mohanji properly at that time. It was just so much of negativity, so much of turmoil. So when he approached me with this mantra proposal, and it just sounded like, well, it can only help me. I didn't even think or feel that I need to go to Mohanji and ask him for the permission. So at a deeper level, I could say it was something that appealed to my spiritual ego. That's definitely the case. So I'm the only one who is being offered this great secret mantra, which would really put me into vibration of Devi, and so a spiritual ego is that part of us that wants us to be above others and special, and with special recognition and special powers. And that's the button that he was pressing, and he was trying to hook me through that. So he did teach me this mantra, but luckily at some point I did go to Mohanji, and I understood that this mantra was not a true mantra, and that some words in this mantra were just a bit twisted around, enough to create an effect which was not the effect of the white path, which was not genuine. So it had a hook to it. Now this man claimed that he's in communion with Devi, and at one point Mohanji spoke to him, and Mohanji asked him, so how does Devi appear to you? What do you feel? What kind of smell? What do you see when she appears? And he told Mohanji, I can feel the scent or smell of raw meat. And Mohanji said, or he thought to himself, well, that's not Devi. You know, Devi appears with the scent of most beautiful celestial fragrance, not with the flesh of raw flesh or raw meat smell. So Mohanji started to understand that something was not fully right there. So the Devi that this man was connecting to was not actually Devi. And he was using this manipulative methods of hooking people, and he was especially aiming at ladies in our group. So at times when we have different gatherings, we meet at different places, he would be secretly not so openly, but he's not really trying to hide either. Somewhere in a corner he sits and he starts giving knowledge, and he talks with this special energy which he obtained through this mantras that he was chanting and whatever, which makes him appear like something great. So his aim was to outshine Mohanji. His aim was to position himself as the guru, and to show or prove that he's smarter than Mohanji, that he is more, in every sense above Mohanji in terms of his endurance, how many days he can go with less sleep, and how much he chants, and how much he does this and that. Like all his achievements were displayed, and on top of that, the way he spoke, he was positioning himself in that way that he's very knowledgeable, And as this was going on, this mantra was offered to me, and at some point I felt something was not right. I recognized it, and I started withdrawing from that. I had my doubts, I could see something was not right there. And thank God I actually spoke to Mohanji about it. And that's where I understood one of the great tests on spiritual path, when the shadow energies infiltrate the white, and you are given this choice whether you want to go into displaying your powers into, in a way it's based on the vibrational greed. When you have the greed to quickly become something great, you are not going in an organic way as guided by your guru, but you want to go faster, you want it all, this is the greed. So the shadow energies work through fear or through greed. They don't work through unconditionality of love like the true gurus do. And the shadow energies work in a way of hooking us. So once you're hooked, you feel you can't do without it. Just like any addiction. You don't feel that you are okay without it. While the true guru is always leaving you the space to, if you want, you can leave. You have to be with the guru because you want, because it's your free will and your mature choice based on your free will. And this is the biggest difference. And I have recognized Mohanji as my guru, and luckily at some point I had enough sense to talk to him about this. And I've started understanding that something is not right. And when this understanding happened in me, he turned on this lady. From me, he turned on her with the same story, with the same mantra that will make her the Devi, which will make her great. And they started like, being together. They became intimate, and then they ran away together. And later on, he used her to, malign Mohanji, to talk lies about him, to talk bad about him. So this was the journey. So now the turning point for me, I'll get back to my crescendo of my experience. I didn't immediately fully understand what's going on. I didn't understand that he's manipulative. I just felt that I was in this complete misery of feeling not good enough, I connected with all married women who, at some point, you go through your life and let's say your husband becomes somebody great and you are in the back supporting and you give all you can, to be of support to, in my case, I was working through so many teams and ACT Foundation, this and Maitri and this and that, and continuous communication, coordination, and not all of it is visible, right? It's that background support, which takes a lot of time, plus there is a child, and plus so many responsibilities. So I felt that I did my best, and now all of a sudden I felt there was somebody else who is better than me, or younger than me, or maybe more beautiful than me, or maybe more successful than me, and I was not good enough anymore, and I feel this is what many married women go through. So there was some connection with the actual path of the feminine path. That's what I connected with. At a deeper level, I also felt it was karmic, because when I was 19 years old, I remember at the time when I was working for UN, and later on, there was just this waves of so many married men being like fascinated by me, like as if they saw everything they ever sought for in a woman. They saw it in me, and I was like in the center of attention, and I was so many of these married men were after me, and I always stayed away from it. But there was one case where I came very close to start being emotionally involved with one married man. Luckily, I came out of it on time, but one warning that happened, and I'll never forget this moment. We started talking more. I actually liked his maturity, and I enjoyed our conversations, and the chemistry happened naturally. And he told me that his marriage is not usual, that he has an agreement with his wife, that he has like his freedom, in a way, and the way they got married was such that they agreed on this from the onset. So I kind of started considering maybe this is acceptable or not acceptable, what should I do? And then because he got emotionally involved, his wife noticed it, and he prepared secretly a gift for me at his home. He wrapped it nicely, and some gift. I can't remember what was the occasion, but I'll just never forget this moment when he brought me this gift, and I took it home and I opened it, and there was a small paper inside, like a note, and I looked, and it's written, "I wish you all the best on your path on which you are walking through life." I'm not translating that from my language, but it was like you are like breaking through everything and you're just piercing through and walking through life, I wish you all the best. And then her name was at the bottom. So I found this note very strangely. Who wrote this, and what is she really saying? But the energy was very kind of strange and unpleasant. So the next day I asked him about this. I said the name, and I said, "Do you know who this is?" And his face kind of turned, blank, and he was like, well, that's my wife. And I said, well, she wrote a note to me. I found the paper in that gift that you gave me. And then he was angry about it. He was not happy that she was intruding, But it was like a warning bell for me. In terms of karma, and I wanted to share this sincerely here because as a warning to other ladies, if you ever get tempted to actually interfere into somebody else's marriage and life, especially with their children involved, think again. Think again, because there is karma being created there. And I felt, at a deeper level, I felt that I was there very close. I was not really intimate with this man. It was a bit of kind of, talking and hugging and all this, but it was not, it didn't reach the point where we actually started being together fully. But I came very close, and then after his wife gave this message, something changed in me, and I lost my full interest, But it took me a while to extract myself emotionally from this whole story. And I was only 19, so, it wasn't really the age in which you have so much maturity. But at this point, I felt that this was the karma I was going through because of that. That was my feeling. I could be wrong, but that's what I felt. So I had to feel how it is when you are a married woman and there's somebody who is better than you in some way, more fascinating than you, who appears and everybody is like, wow, talking great about this person, and you feel so not good enough. It's a very, very tough feeling to go through because you don't know what to do to change. Whatever you do, you're just not good enough. And this was boiling in me. This whole emotional turmoil was going on until we reached Shirdi. And at that point, I suddenly got this idea. You know what? Baba put me into this relationship. He's the one who brought me to Mohanji. I asked him, to have master as a husband, and he put me there. So if I'm not good enough, well, Baba should tell me. And if I'm not good enough, I will gracefully withdraw. That was my decision. I will gracefully withdraw. I will not create any drama because that means I'm just not good enough. This lady is better. She will do better work for the mission. So I can just, hand over the position and gracefully withdraw. I was honestly considering this very seriously because I just felt everybody thought she was better, and maybe it's true. Maybe I'm not devoted enough. Maybe I'm not hardworking enough. I'm just not good enough. So we reached Shirdi, and suddenly, the way the Baba works is always so special. His leelas are something beyond. So Baba kind of gave me a hint. Suddenly Mohanji mentioned, there's one friend, a very dear friend, one Indian lady who is deeply devoted to Shirdi Baba. I mean, she is in communions with him every day. She lives for Baba. She's all in aratis and chants and seva and very pure soul. And she has she got this blessing from Baba that in her altar, in her puja room, on the altar, if she places somebody's photo, and over the night, Vibhuti will appear on that photo and some message from Baba. Then I prayed to Baba and I said, Baba, you decide, you tell me what to do. I've reached my limit, I cannot go on like this. And I leave this to you because you brought me on this path, so you decide. So I prayed to him, and then I waited. I remember for 2 days I waited, and then the message came back, and the message was very brief, but it was so profound, so intimate. I can't repeat the same words because it's something very intimate and very deep, but basically Baba said, she's divine and she will be protected he spoke about my purity and devotion, and that I'm protected. And that was enough. That was enough. And that day we did a food seva, and we were on the streets of Shirdi like early morning, like 5:30 or so, and we were distributing food to the needy people. And this same lady, because she was taking photos, she took a photo of me, and there was this huge orb, bigger than my head, that appeared exactly around my head. And that was yet another loving confirmation from Baba. I knew it immediately, and I was just so, I can't tell you what kind of boost that was for me, because I was at the bottom of my self-respect, self-esteem, the ego was crushed. I felt I was the lowliest of the low. I was not at all feeling as any Devi. But it was a huge lesson to go through. So from this guy offering me some great status, which was actually fake, to being crushed and put at the bottom, to being turned upside down, the whole thing happened. And it was amazing, really amazing. I'll never forget it. But this grace from Baba was something that's, I have no words. The way he expresses his love, how he's always there for us, is unforgettable. I was hoping I would not cry this time. So I also remember another experience when it just came to me now. I realized that I didn't share it here. I spoke about it in my podcast, but not here, so I'll share that as well. There was another moment where these manipulative energies worked their way, and in a very invisible way, not noticeable to me, to take me away from Mohanji and this path. So there was this other guru, I can't even call him guru, more of a teacher, but whatever you could say guru for the simplicity's sake, who was having his own technique, some breathing technique, which was like he claimed to be the highest of the techniques. And I tried this technique because that was way back in like 2008, I think, soon after my movie acting experience of Orange Patlin. So after that movie acting experience, I was in another ashram where I went through yoga teacher training, and then I met this man. And so it was 2008. And he said, if you like, you can become like one of my main teachers who will go around and teach this technique to other people. So I thought like, wow, the technique is amazing, and sure, I would love to do it. But he said, if you do this technique, you cannot do any visualizing. Visualization is not allowed. So if there's any other technique that you're doing that has even an element of visualizing, you have to make your choice. So I was like, okay, I don't do any visualizing. And then when I came back to Dubai, I was talking to Mohanji, and then I suddenly remember that in the Power of Purity meditation, there's just this element where you are invoking your parents, and you say, visualize your parents coming in front of you. So it is visualizing, it falls into that category. So I suddenly realized, that means I would not be able to do Power of Purity meditation. And even though I was aware from where this meditation was received from Mohanji and the grace of our tradition and everything, and blessings of Baba, and I still raised this question with Mohanji, and I simply told him, well, he told me this, he offered me that, but that would mean I cannot do Power of Purity because there's this one small element of visualizing in it. So what do you think? And Mohanji just looked at me, I remember that, and then there was a presence of Shirdi Baba, and he said, Baba just told me, just give up on her, she's useless. And when he said that, I lost my breath. It's suddenly when you're in a daze and somebody slaps you, how you get shocked. So I was like, but no, actually, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. I'm not choosing here between you and this path and him. I'm simply saying that this is what he told me. I didn't make a decision, so I was justifying myself. But that was the time when Baba helped me by being very strict, because he was getting fed up with my blindness, and my superficiality and going through all these techniques and not recognizing whom I have in front of me. I didn't recognize Mohanji straight away. I didn't fully understand. It took time. So that was one example how Baba saved me and helped me stay on the path. And now when I was at the bottom, he helped me by just saying these most loving words and just brought me, like a baby. He brought me up. So I will never forget that. That was really beautiful. So after this, everything was easier. I have regained my confidence, and then soon after this, the whole drama ended in a way that this man turned on this girl, and two of them left, and this whole thing got resolved. And later on, Devi Amma said that if Devi, meaning me, if Devi was not present there, this could have gone in a really wrong direction. It was a danger for the entire mission, because the shadow energies would have penetrated so deeply that it would be very, very tough for Mohanji to continue. So this was the time when I was chosen by the tradition to play that role of Shakti and to protect. But it went over my back, and it just completely churned me from inside out. So after this 2 months that I somehow survived, came back to Serbia, where I lived at that time, I was still carrying a lot of, and it took me a lot of time to go through this. I was somewhere deep inside. I was still not fully out of this not good enough pain. I still had to digest all of this that went through, and it was the time when I really felt the need to talk to somebody who would understand. Especially women, we have this trait that we want to confide in a best friend. It's like a therapy that we need. More than men, we need to confide in a friend who would keep that as a secret and who would have the maturity to understand. And intuitively, I could not feel I had anyone like that. I could not fully trust, because when there is some big drama happening with Mohanji and me, it's very interesting news for the gossip circles, so I have to be very careful what I can say, what I cannot say. And I just felt there was one lady who I felt had that maturity. And because this was all still brewing inside, I went to her and spoke about this. But that was a mistake. She actually kind of took it against me. And soon when Mohanji came, we met, three of us met, and I'll never forget this experience. So after all this I went through, I do feel I got some thicker skin already, but the kind of words that she spoke that day were the ugliest words that anybody ever spoke to me in my whole life. And when we sat together, suddenly, she was being polite, talking something nice with Mohanji, and then she just turned on me, and she wanted to really put me down in front of him. So she, spoke very highly of him, how he is the avatar and he's this great being, and I am not complimenting at all. On the contrary, I am this and that and that and that. And it was like arrows being thrown at me one after the other. So initially I tried to defend myself, because one of the first accusations that she said had some, there was an element of truth, but the rest was misrepresented. So I tried to justify it, to explain, but she would not let me talk. And then she started saying other things which had nothing to do with reality, accusing me I said something which I never said. And then at some point I understood that this is totally out there, that this is so insane that I'm putting myself down by even responding to it. It doesn't deserve my response. And on top of that, in that moment, I was feeling, as she was throwing those words at me, energetically I could feel the hit on the second chakra, really going into those insecurities, really hitting there. I was being hit in the pelvic region. And I sat with my spine straight, and I, especially after my, at that time, recent experiences with Baba, I invoked Baba and I said, Baba, I surrender this at your feet. And I just visualized myself bowing down at his feet. And whatever she spoke and in fact shouted at me, I surrendered to him. Immediately, I could feel this immense, blissful, calming, soothing energy. It's like a ring of energy around me. And I was engulfed in that energy. And I sat with my eyes closed, and she continued. It was a litany of the ugliest possible words. And as she continued, I was fully in that energy. And none of these arrows were reaching the protective shield that Baba created. And, this is the energy law compared to the mail. The mail, somebody says to you, which if you don't open the mail, it goes back to the sender. And this is an important law we have to understand. So if there's a mail sent to you and you don't open it, it goes back to the sender. If somebody offends you and humiliates you in public or in front of somebody else, and you just don't take it in, you simply witness. You don't allow it to hook in. You don't connect with it. You simply allow the experience to happen, and you witness. That goes back to that person. So as she continued with this attack, you could say attack, that's what it was, she started to breathe heavily, and she was breathing and shifting from one corner of the chair to another, and she was getting so worked up. And then this awkward silence happened, and I just sat there. And the awkward silence happened, and at one point Mohanji said, "Shall we go?" And I said, "Yes." And they exchanged some pleasantries between themselves, him and Mohanji, something polite, and I did not speak to her. And I left her home, and I've not seen her ever since. Now this experience was like on top of everything I've been through that year. It was really amazing. Now what I felt later on, I've contemplated on this. I felt that this was a karmic leverage happening. There was something karmic between me and her, and from another life. And it is possible that I, in one way or the other, would have put her down in front of other people. And this had to happen for the karma between us to be resolved. So with the help of Mohanji and Baba, I was able to rise above that. I did not respond equally. I did not feel the need to now speak badly about her to everyone and to put her down. In fact, I still, when I think of her, I feel a certain respect. She's very dedicated lady, very deep. She does like energy work, and she has reached a depth that is remarkable. But I feel that she has taken a very tough burden on herself, and I don't know if she's fully able to handle it without the presence of the master in her life. So that I'm actually not in touch with her, and I don't know what is happening in her life. But I still feel some respect, you know. She's not somebody I'm against, you know. But that was not expected, that literal flooding of ugliest possible words, that was not expected at that time. But it was an amazing experience, and if I didn't have her in my life, and if I didn't have this moment, I wouldn't know whether I would be able to respond in this way or not, because I just never had anybody attack me like that, you know. So again, I'm grateful to her. I'm grateful to this other lady who was helping me deal with this not good enough me, and I'm grateful on all these experiences. So from all these experiences I did grow a lot. And so the journey continues, and just when you think it's all going well, for a while it looked like everything was going great. I've traveled, it was I think early 2017, I traveled to South Africa, and I kind of stepped up in my role, and I remember I conducted my very first weekend program on my own. So I usually would assist Mohanji in all the programs in the Balkan region. I would be doing the translations, I would be conducting the processes, meditations, and this and that. And he would do the rest, like the quality satsangs and Shaktipad and all these important things. So I never had the experience of conducting a program on my own. And it's a matter of confidence, because you have to fill up the program for 2 full days, you know, so it's not a small thing. On top of that, Mila traveled with me, and she would go to sleep late, and the entire morning she would sleep while I get up at 4 o'clock and do all the programs. So I would end up sleeping like 3 hours to 3 hours, and then in the evening still have to put Mila to sleep and all that. So it was like it was tough for me. But this program in South Africa went really well, and I was happy that I could see that even though I was tired, the program went beautiful. I was able to talk and feel the grace, feel the flow, and people were happy with everything I spoke, with all the programs, all the processes, all the meditations. Mohanji was present throughout. The grace was flowing. Everybody was happy. So it felt really good, you know, and I felt, I'm going, I'm stepping up in my role, and everything is going well. And on top of that, this was the time when I really had a profound experience with Devi, not through manipulated, twisted mantra, but in a real way. We were with Swami Bhaktananda in Durban, and I believe it was Navaratri, and we chanted the mantras, and I woke up early morning, 4:30 or 5, and the chanting already started. So I immediately, as I opened my eyes, I heard the chanting, and I quickly just brushed my teeth, put some scarf on, and went outside in front of the altar and joined Bhaktananda, and there were another couple of people. And the chanting started, and it was beautiful energy. At some point, I had the most unexpected and most amazing experience. I could feel a very intense, powerful presence of Mother, Divine Mother. And she came in her fierce form as Kali. I could just feel like, and then she just appeared, and she was like huge. And she came and she, with like I saw a golden sword with which she stabbed me in the middle of my crown, and her sword penetrated my central axis all the way down to the root of my spine. And then she did a bit of like, as if she was, creating some space in there, and then pulled the sword out. And this was all like nobody has the reference point that this is even possible, nor did I expect this, I was my mind was completely gone. I was just like, I just stayed there. And then after that experience, I felt that really there was more space and more flow through my central axis, and my meditations became deeper. And I felt immense love towards the Kali form of mother. Like, I used to connect with mother only in her soft, loving form, more like Mother Mary kind of idea of the mother. I was not relating to the Kali aspect. It was, for somebody from Europe, it's quite unusual. It doesn't fit into what you've been taught, and doesn't come as natural to most people. But after this experience, I loved her. I loved her fierceness and her, ability to, face any fear and any negativity. Nothing would be impossible for her, because she is above all that. She's the one who slays the demons and all these shadow energies. And after everything I've been through, I found that refuge in the mother, and it was just amazing. And that stayed with me, and I felt it was a huge empowerment from mother towards me, and some intimacy with that energy started developing in me. So it happened that year, 2017. It was August, I believe, when Mohanji came and we traveled to Switzerland, and there were discussions about us starting to move to Slovenia and start a spiritual center there and changing our life, because the way things were going, it was not going anywhere. And we had to make a decision. Okay, Mila will start going to school. We need to decide where we're going to live and where the center will happen. And all these discussions were happening. At the same time, I was, when I was staying in Serbia for, I don't know how many months, I didn't see Mohanji. And I lost my ability to wake up early in the morning. I had my excuses, like my parents' room next door and the TV would be, loud until 11 o'clock, and Mila likes to sleep till late and Mila doesn't want to fall asleep. And so I had my excuses, right? But this is all that tamasic energy, and Mohanji always insists, you have to wake up early in the morning and find quality, quiet time for your sadhana, for your meditation, kriya, whatever you're doing. It's the time with your higher self. If you don't have that, you won't be able to keep up. You can't cope with the pressure, because the mission is moving at a very high pace. People who are close to us, they know just how intense it is. Although Mohanji is like a fountain of all these new initiatives and new projects and programs that we are doing, and it's difficult to keep up, with all this. And all the time there's more and more and more and more responsibility, and if you're not able to, stay on top of that, at some point, especially if you don't do your spiritual practice, your sadhana, you fall apart. You're just not able to cope. And especially it's for those who are closer to him. So we have volunteers, people who just join in, and as per their comfort and as per their capacity and as per their choice, they volunteer here and there. But then there's another, you could say, category of people who want to step deeper into the connection with the tradition, with the grace, and who want to take more responsibility. Then tradition works on them more. The churning is more, the karma is being speeded up. And more responsibility is brought in and more maturity is expected. This is how it works. So in my case, I always, the expectations are high, because I'm also Mohanji's wife, and I can't just take it easy and wake up late. So that's something he picked up, and he just told me, we were in Switzerland. I didn't expect that, because, we reached there, we went to sleep. He would go to sleep by 10 o'clock. And by the time I got Mila ready and she was all excited about this and that and talking, so we would sleep like by 1 o'clock. and then get up by, I don't know, 7 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I would get up. Mohanji already had his breakfast, so it was like we were not compatible. That was coming as a overall impression. So he already had his breakfast and everything happened, then I only wake up, So he told me, you know what, I feel that this whole wife role is a bit too much for you. It's too much of pressure on you. So maybe it's easier for you to be more comfortable, to make it easy for yourself. We don't have to be husband and wife. You can just be you can still be, of course, in the mission and president of Mohanji Foundation, and I will take care of Mila, and everything will continue in a decent way. But we don't have to be husband and wife. I feel this is too much for you. So, on top of everything I've been through, now this was again, but this time it came from him, right? So it was very painful for me, and I didn't know what to say, and first I was, again, the whole program of me not being good enough from the refugee days, from the poor me, everything came back, all those samskaras, and I fought hard with it. And I just, first I thought that he already made up his mind and that we will just not be together anymore. And it just felt very painful. And I didn't know what to do, because I have, invested all myself into this mission. I have built myself on the platform of the grace of Mohanjian tradition and this mission. There is nothing else for me. I don't have an alternative or something else to go to, nor do I want to. That's another thing, I don't want to, right? So if this ground you stand on is pulled from underneath your feet, what do you hold on to? It's just so it's like a huge hit. I don't know if I can convey this in words, but I just didn't know what to do. And it was already end of this travel, and he left me with this, and he said, I'm going now to India, I'm coming back in 2 months. So it'll be November 2017. I'm coming back. You have now time to think about it, make your decision, and act accordingly. So basically, if I'm going to step up, then I better step up. It should show in my depth of my connection, in my sadhana, in what I radiate, what I do. So this is something I'm sharing because I want, some of you will probably find this useful in your life. Like when we are in tamas, we don't immediately realize it's tamas. And we will have our excuses. So I had my excuses. My parents go to sleep late. Mila does that. I have so many things to complete, and sometimes until late at night I have to type. And I'm doing the work. I'm not watching the movies. Why is he saying that? I'm doing this. I'm doing that. So there are all these excuses. But actually, the truth is, I'm not managing the time properly. I can do it better. I can have a team. I can delegate the work. I don't have to do all this myself. If I just focus, get up early in the morning, connect with that grace, come out of the doorship, surrender, and then organize my time, I can achieve much more. And that's true. It's the truth. So I have to admit it to myself. So I can't blame my parents or Mila or anybody else that I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever. So I started working on this sincerely, waking up in the morning, even though it's cold and the heating in the house starts at 7 a.m. I have my excuses. So it's, as I said before, awakening is not comfortable. It's not going to be comfortable. There's a willpower that has to be used and applied. So I started waking up early. I started planning my time better. I reached out to other people and asked for help. Who can do this instead of me? Do I have to type up all these texts in English and Serbian and can somebody else do this? Can somebody else do that? So I learned to delegate more. I learned to rely on others more. I was coming out of the doorship more. And only then did I create that little window of opportunity for me to actually create something, you know? It's that quality time when you think into the future, when you pre-plan, when you step out of the usual. So what happened at that time, awakening yoga nidra came to me. I just, in that, inspiration of getting up early in the morning, being in the empty space and all that, I suddenly got this feeling, intuition that yoga nidra could be much more than what it is. Like it's beautiful induction into the alpha state of mind. Then you put some positive affirmations, and you strengthen people, make them affirm that they are healthy and that everything is meaningful and they're connected with the elements. But it can be much more. And you can actually, in that state, go into intimacy with divine. You can invoke the grace of Guru Tattva, and you can actually ask for the highest, for your liberation. I just suddenly got this idea, and I don't think anybody has done it before. And I felt it was my calling to create this. So I sat down and I wrote this whole thing. And that's how Awakening Yoga Nidra came to life. Then my birthday came, and there was one event with one gentleman from Europe who is also like delivering Shaktipad, and there was some event where people were gathered. And I participated in that. And in this moment of silence, I suddenly felt there was something pushing me from the back of the neck. And I did this a couple of times. And then I got telepathic message that I should chant the Kali mantra, Mahabhadra Kali mantra that I learned in Skandavela ashram, which invokes that grace of the fierce form of Kali, And, these are all people I don't even know. And it was a strange moment where I just kind of got up and I trusted this inner intuition. And in that silence, I chanted this mantra. And it was a huge energy that descended from the ceiling. If you imagine a tent that falls on everybody's head, literally like that it felt. And then people cried left and right. There's this huge cleansing and release. Some were in complete grace, and it was like a rapture moment, and it was like amazing. So that was again Mother's presence. Then the Boar Lake retreat happened. Mohanji arrived, and he still didn't say whether he didn't tell me when he's gonna make the final decision whether I passed my exam or not. But he was quiet about it. We just went through the retreat. And at the Boar Lake retreat, there was this experience where he came up with some new technique. He divided people into, there were 160 people, I think it was like a huge audience. It's a lake in South Serbia. And it was a beautiful retreat. And he divided people into several groups, and he asked that everybody, one group says ho, then other group says ho. I believe it was ho sound, or some sound goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they go one by one. They don't mix, this group doesn't mix with the other, and it goes as a wave through the audience. Right? So I've never heard of this before. It was just something completely new. So Mohanji was like on a small platform stage, and I was next to him translating. And as this started going, there was a bit of mixed sounds were coming from here and there, and suddenly something prompted me to get up, and I got up in there, and I started going with the hands, ho, 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 and I started waving this group, that group, this group, that group, and as my hands were waving, suddenly I felt I had more than two hands. It was a very strange, powerful energy. And so many people in the audience, those who had the eyes open or who were more intuitive, they felt again this huge presence. It was again Kali. And it was huge, the energy, and the whole thing that happened was just beyond description. So I was again like zapped by the experience. Then for the first time, Awakening Yoga Nidra happened. People loved it. Then in the midst of this Boar Lake retreat, suddenly it came to me to create conscious dancing. Now it just flowed. I was like, we need to do the dance where we kind of go through the chakras, and then we go into the vertical axis, and then we spin and feel the vertical axis, and then we align, and then we da-da-da-da. So it all flowed in a moment, and I sat down and I wrote it down, and then I searched for some songs on YouTube, and towards the end of the retreat I put it all together, and for the first time at that retreat we did conscious dancing. And it was amazing. I have no words. It was just bliss, bliss, and bliss. So it was just a great retreat. So many things happened. And still Mohanji said nothing. I didn't ask. I waited for him to say. And then at the end of the retreat, I'll never forget this moment. This is so interesting. There was this, everybody had a great experience. They were just out of this world. And towards the end of the retreat, Mohanji usually thanks all the volunteers. Thank you, this one, this, that one, that. Thank you for doing this, thank you for doing that. So he thanked all the main organizers and volunteers. And but he didn't mention me at all. And I didn't even feel he had to. I'm part of the whole, I don't feel myself separate. And I was not in that doership at all. It doesn't matter. It didn't pinch me that he didn't mention me. I was fine with it. Suddenly, I remember to my right side, there's this lady who came to our programs for the first time. I don't even know her name. She got up and she was so moved. She was almost crying. And she said, "I'm sorry. I have to say something. You have thanked everybody, but I must say," and then she kind of cried and got emotional. "This retreat would not be what it was if it wasn't for Devi. She's the one who carried it on her back. And this and that." And she became very emotional. And as she spoke, I cried also, because I didn't expect that. I cried because I understood that it's the tradition that made this little Leela, this drama, and spoke through her, this unknown woman, And in that moment, I could feel that I have passed my exam, that I changed my track, and it happened. What was supposed to happen with this ultimate scolding of Mohanji, he's done quite a lot of scolding on me, but this kind of intense one was not done so far. So with that, I felt that I passed my exam, and then he only confirmed it later on, verbally, and so that now I've already lost my voice, so it's time to end this session. I would like to offer one more final session next Saturday, where I will make it a live session and keep it open for questions. I already received some questions from you, so I would like to give some time to you as the audience to ask me whatever you feel you would like to clarify or give more attention to, or to have me answer. And in that way we will conclude our journey together. Thank you so much. Thank you. Lots of love.